Thank you so much. Here for reaction, we have Stephen Yates, former Deputy Assistant to Vice President Cheney, and Ron Christie, former Special Assistant to President George W. Bush. Both of you for joining me. Ron, let me start with you. What statement do you think the White House is making with this?
Well, I think the White House is making a statement by saying if you disagree with President Obama publicly, you're going to end up paying for it. I think Chuck Hagel was pushed out, and the reason I think he was pushed out is you recall that the Secretary of Defense had made the comment that he didn't necessarily agree with the president's strategy as it related to ISIS, and that came on the heels of the President Obama saying that they were nothing more than JV. So the signal I'm getting from this is you better be on the same page with the president, otherwise you're on the outside looking in.
Yeah, Stephen, is that how you interpret it?
It is very much so. I mean, it's very clear that there is one person who watches the president on messaging and personnel more than anyone else, and it's Valerie Jarrett. And so I think they had to have been looking at the politics of this, and the politics of the president's foreign policy have been terrible. And it's odd, though, that a White House that micromanages foreign policy thinks that changing personnel in an agency would help. It's really within the White House where the problem resides.
Well, so what does it say about who they'll pick next? I mean, Ron, what do you think? They've floated a number of names have been out there. Senator Jack Reed, one. Former Undersecretary of Defense who was a runner-up for the slot. Michelle Flournoy is another one that they're thinking of. What do you think of, and Ashton Carter as well. What do you think?
Well, I think first and foremost, Melissa, they're going to find somebody who's going to sing from the same score sheet as the president. I think Steve's absolutely right in his analysis here in the sense that if you're not on the same messaging page with Valerie Jarrett and the senior White House staff, then you're not on the same page with the president. And I look to someone like Michelle Flournoy, who was mentioned very prominently the first time around. I also wouldn't rule out Jack Reed, the senator from Rhode Island, given his experience in the military.
So, Stephen, what does it say to our enemies out there? I mean, what does it say about our strategy then?
Well, first, it doesn't tell them we have a strategy. I mean, really, the president doesn't have to have a reason to ask a secretary in the cabinet to resign, but he does need to have a reason for why someone else is uniquely qualified for this particular time and mission. Michelle Flournoy is talked about a lot. She would be the least qualified person to be a Secretary of Defense in the history of the department, going from undersecretary 2 steps up to secretary. Senator Reed is a personal friend of the president's, famously traveled with the president when Chuck Hagel did in 2008 election cycle, would be a more natural move. But it looks as though the White House is prepared to play perhaps some gender politics to try to distract from the policy disarray that we've had.
Wow. Ron, do you agree with that? I mean, and policy more than anything else to be playing politics.
I do. I mean, you're hearing from Stephen Yates, who's one of the best in the business and was Vice President Cheney's deputy National Security Advisor when I did the same for his domestic policy staff. And I can tell you that one thing that you have to be rock solid and rock certain about is that you have someone in the position who's qualified, who knows how to lead. And unfortunately, I think what we're looking at is someone who's going to be more of a loyalist than a leader of the Department of Defense.
All right. Thanks to both of you. Appreciate your time. New York on high alert.